Hi everyone, I'm Glenn from TheGrowthCode, and today I'll be talking about how you can become more comfortable with saying no to people. Don't forget, these are based on my visions, life experiences, and I put them down in principles that I now use. So let's go! So do you feel it's very difficult to say no to people, friends, or even family members? Well, you're certainly not the only one. And in this video, I will share with you how I became comfortable with saying no. So why should you learn to be comfortable with saying no? Well, first of all, if you don't, you're not being very respectful and kind towards yourself. For example, if a friend asks you to join him or her to a party, you might feel pressure to say yes to please them. But in fact, you're not being very honest with them. By doing this, you're crossing your own boundaries, and you're also not being honest with your friend. Because by saying yes, they will actually think you want to come along, which isn't the case. So if you are struggling with standing up for yourself and saying no, you actually only have two options. You either lie or find an excuse to not go, or you go to the party. But don't you think life will become more enjoyable if you learn to say no? And don't you think you'll actually grow closer to one another by being honest with them? Well, I used to have a lot of issues with this myself. But I discovered by experimenting with this that we actually became closer as friends. So thinking back at it now, I probably shouldn't have worried so much about it. But you know, there's always a chance that the friendship ends. But that would have just meant one or two things. First of all, maybe we weren't compatible as friends. And second of all, perhaps she wasn't then, hanging out with me because she liked me for who I am. But either way, saying no in a situation like that is still a win. Sorry for the noise, they're actually doing some construction work on the roof on the building next to mine. But let's make the best of it, right? So how did I actually become comfortable with saying no? Well, you might recall from previous videos, but I implemented a few key thoughts that I had written down on little pieces of paper, and I kept those in my wallet. So every time I would open my wallet, I would think about what was written on the cards. And this brought me to the first principle. So the first principle is, by being honest, a relationship can grow. And yes, sometimes it's uncomfortable and scary. But I don't believe you can fully enjoy life if you always say yes to people just to please them. A great tip is to start creating a gray area. Now let me explain this to you. I didn't like going to parties because it was 8 to 10 hours of loud music and a lot of people, right? And then while I was getting therapy at some point, they were coaching me to become more honest with people. So I decided to communicate with my friend. So we decided to still go to the parties for a maximum of 6 hours, and then we would just go home. The second principle was a thought that if I say no to someone and they become upset about it, that doesn't mean I did a bad thing. This one is actually very important because you might, just as I did, start to feel bad for saying no. And fear starts to creep up because you might have hurt them or disappoint them. But that is for them to deal with and communicate about. And also remember, you're showing a different side of yourself. You're learning new habits. So for some people, it also takes some time to adjust to that, just as much as it takes yourself some time to learn to become comfortable with it. Because you are, making new habits out of difficult things. A tip for this one is actually to stay aware of the fact that by saying no to someone, you're not doing anything bad. On the contrary, first of all, you're standing up for yourself. You're letting the other person know this is my boundary. Hey. And second of all, you're actually being honest with your friend, and you no longer have to remember the lie or the excuse you told them. So like what I did with my pieces of paper and writing thoughts on them, you have to find the thoughts that work for you. And don't make it a black or white thing. Try to find something in the middle. Because it's very difficult and actually maybe even impossible to be okay with coming from nothing to full bam wham, here you go ma'am. So these two principles have helped me to become comfortable with it. And don't get me wrong, at times this is still a struggle for me as well. But not to the point anymore where I won't say no if I really don't want to do it. And this week I have two exercises for you. So the first exercise is, think of an activity that you're doing just to please somebody. And once you found it, shoot him or her a text saying that you love to spend time with them, but that you don't really love the activity in question. This way you're setting yourself up so it's no longer too big of an obstacle to say no next time they invite you. If they haven't blocked you by then. The second exercise is to think of your own preferences. If by the off chance you still have friends by now, try to arrange an activity that you would like to do. And some friends will tag along and others will decline. The focus here, however, is that declining an invitation is a normal part of any relationship. And a no is not a rejection, but it's actually a sign of someone feeling comfortable enough to be honest with you. But perhaps I'm making it sound too simple in this video. I know the fears and doubts can creep up on you. I had my fair share of doubts, fear, and feelings of discomfort trying to become comfortable with this. But it is possible to become comfortable with this if you practice. And it's easier to practice with a gray area than an all or nothing approach. Because the moment it's an all or nothing approach, from my own experience, those are not usually very successful. But anyway, this is the end of the video. I'm Glenn from TheGrowthCode. Thank you for watching, and let's work together to get you closer to a life that you want to lead. Take care.